Gather around, freaks. We're here. It's Thursday night, and we're going to do a podcast. And we're going to ask the question we ask each and every week, and that is, hey, did you see this one?
The night is dark, and the air is still. The moon casts an eerie glow over the internet, where a group of curious individuals have gathered to discuss their shared fascination for the macabre. They hold in their hands a book with a foreboding presence, bound in flesh and inked in blood. A tome of horror that only opens its pages when a sacrifice is made. Within its ancient passages lie the secrets of the most infamous murderers and monsters of all time. Join us. But beware, for once this book is open, there's no telling what horrors may be unleashed. This is the Grimoire of Familiar Killers.
It's that time of year again when we turn the page on the Grimoire of Familiar Killers. I hope everybody enjoyed that extremely long intro. Wow. I didn't realize how long that goes on. But it's good, right? Ben, what did you think? Did you like it?
I loved it. I was very impressed.
Are you scared?
Oh,
Are you spooked?
that makes me feel good in my heart.
Are you spooked?
I am very spooked right now.
I originally cut that so that I could put clips from the movies with going to the music, and then I realized that this is primarily a non-visual medium, so maybe could cut that down a little bit. But anywho,
hello everybody. Welcome back to the Grimoire of Familiar Killers special for Halloween month, October. My words aren't working. It's, hey, did you see this one? I'm Jason Robert Phillips, joined as always by my illustrious co-host, Steve Waters.
illustrious. Ooh la la.
Illustrious. And,
I've been flipping through the grimoire. My fingers are covered in blood.
There's blood everywhere. I can't figure out why.
It's inked in blood.
It's inked. Whoa, yeah, that'll do
and
it.
made of skin. Yeah.
You spent a lot of time on that.
Yeah, I did.
It's true. It's true. It's just pictures of Jason and Freddy kissing mostly. I'm gonna get cursed for saying that. And Chucky's
yeah, don't you know that if you speak ill against the grimoire, it haunts you?
It haunts you. As people who've been watching this show may have noticed, Mr. Ben Mason of the BS Bargainman podcast is back. Put your hands together for Mr. Mason. Welcome back to the show, Benjamin.
Well, thanks for having me on, gentlemen. I'm looking forward to talking about this movie.
Listen. Compared to the first three, this one certainly is the fourth one.
This is definitely at the bottom.
Oh, no. I had a good time. We'll get to that. As we do each and every week at the top of the show, we have a segment where we kind of run down our history with the film we're talking about. So without further ado, here is our history.
A brief history.
That's right.
Oh, yes.
The last time you were here, Ben, we had another co-host, and we definitely did not have segments that were that had stings. So welcome to hell.
It's gotten classier.
We got classy. We have intros. We have that thing that just played. Steve had a lot of time on his hands one day and made like 6 or 7 of them. So you're going to get to hear.
I went into the age of ADHD and I hyper-focused on something.
And we all benefit. There's one that we play at the end of the show that's going to leave you in pure confusion, so look out for that. I've made it a tradition around here to have the guest go first. So Ben, why don't you tell us your history with this film, and if you want to add any history about the film to that, feel free.
Oh God, where to begin with that one? For the longest time, the final chapter was my favorite Friday the 13th film. For me, Halloween is my favorite movie. However, for slasher franchises, Friday the 13th is the most easily watchable. And I think it's because it's just a mishmash of fun. I can't really tell you what kills happen in what films if you catch me on the spot. Having watched this a couple of times over the last few days, I do know what happens to whom in this movie. But you don't need to know what's happening to rewatch a Friday the 13th movie and enjoy it. For me, growing up, I was always a fan of the two Coreys. So you get Corey Feldman, you get Corey Haim. Put Corey Feldman in a Friday the 13th movie, I'm going to like it. The issue I had with this one, which should have taken it away from being my favorite Friday the 13th movie, is that there's no summer camp. I love the summer camp setting. But there is something about this that stuck out to me, whether it was the acting, either good or bad, the soundtrack, not so much good, but the special effects. I really love the special effects. I really love the kills in this movie. So whenever I'd have to throw on a Friday the 13th movie, that is my go-to, or was my go-to. We'll get into that. As far as like the history of the film goes, I think you're both going to cover it, and I'll throw in a few things here and there. More than anything, I was really surprised that you brought this one up and asked me to be on, because Jason, I don't know if you know my full opinion on this movie or not. So you're going to get a lot. But more than anything, I really want to know why you picked this, your histories with this movie. We'll get into, I'm sure, whether or not you enjoyed it. But Friday the 13th Part 4, or Friday the 13th, the final chapter, is very different than the rest of the franchise. So I'm very much looking forward to this.
Oh, interesting that you should ask that question. I'll go last. Steve, why don't you hit us with your history?
I mean, much like many of the Friday franchise movies, I one day gained bravery to watch movies that scared the shit out of me when I was between the ages of 8 and 12. And Friday the 13th with Freddy and Chucky, I kind of binged them all within the same sort of chunk of my adolescence. And luckily for me, all 3 of those franchises around Halloween time were basically played all throughout the month of October on TV. So I was able to watch all of them. I can't tell you if I watched them in order because I don't remember. And like you, Ben, I do have a tough time when thinking about Friday the 13th as a whole to differentiate which kills are in which movie. It's kind of like a big pot of mashed potatoes of violent death. All tastes like Friday to me. And I don't have like a clear moment in which I watched this movie, but I do remember that moment of my life being joyous in the sense that I finally kind of got over that fear of all these monsters, and that's what they are. They're modern monster movies, and grew to love them all. Grew to love each and every one of our Grimoire stars. And Friday, though not my favorite of the Grimoire stars, it's up there. And I think I've mentioned this probably every Grimoire month so far, that I really like the Friday the 13th video game that came out, I think 2015 or 16. And I've been playing it sort of on and off since it came out. And one of the greatest parts about that video game is the attention to detail for the levels. And, you know, like the last three movies, sorry, the two houses that the movie basically takes place in are very much showcased in the video game to crazy amounts of detail. Like when Corey Feldman goes into the basement and to try and figure out what's wrong with the power, there's like this wood lattice behind him, and that lattice is in the game. And immediately I was like, I've hidden in this room from Jason Voorhees many times. I know the layout of this room perfectly. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if I would say that it's my favorite of the three or the four that we watched so far, but I think as you were saying, Ben, it's probably the easiest to watch. It has sort of like a very simple but clear story. The characters, like you said, either good or bad, there's nothing complicated about them, you know. The one character who keeps looking in the mirror, we're like, we get it. She's dealing with the loss of innocence. We get it. We can see the innocence in her eyes. Stop showing us her face. And I mean, they set this character up for you to think that she's going to be the final girl because of how many times you have to watch her looking at herself longingly in the mirror, only to have her just like have the most blunt and awkward death out of everyone. Anyway, let's pass it on to you, Jason, because I'll just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going into territory about the actual movie itself. I don't have any actual history about the movie for my history. So Ben, if you want to chime back in, or we can just move on. But I will tell you my actual history with this movie. I remember I'm similar to Steve in that I only recently have gained the courage and the desensitization to be able to watch pretty much any horror movie, but especially horror movies from the 80s. And I find them to be quite entertaining. To answer your question why we're doing this movie specifically, it is the fourth time we've opened the Grimoire. So the first month, back in like 2021, we did the first four, and then in 2022, we had a spring Grimoire where we did the sequels, or I think it was the next October. Anyway, we're at the fourth one. That's why we're doing the fourth one. But what's interesting about this, and it's very near and dear to my heart, is not only did this poster scare the shit out of me as a kid, and I thought this movie was a completely different thing than it is, I'm technically named after this movie.
Do tell.
So Jason was a popular name in the 80s, but a lot of parents didn't want to name their kid Jason because of Jason Voorhees. And my parents were like, the final chapter just came out last year. He's done. That's it. There's no more Jason. They never make 3 of these, let alone 4. Are you kidding?
The doctor lifted you up and went handed you to your mom.
And they decided Jason was fine. He's not going to get made fun of for Jason Voorhees. He's not going to put on a hockey mask and kill us in our sleep.
They don't know that.
And then like a couple months after I was born, the fucking next one comes out. Like they barely even missed a beat. Or maybe 1986 is when part 5 comes out. But after that, my dad started telling people that like, oh, I low-key also named him Jason because he's a huge stoner, and the shortened form of joint is J. So I'm technically named after this movie, but I'm technically named after weed as well.
I feel like that's like a stoned thought he probably had years later.
It absolutely was. But it's very real that the final chapter had just dropped and Jason was dead forever. He dies like twice in this movie.
That's the name of the next one. Jason Dead Forever. And then he comes back again.
So yeah, that I've been telling that story for 38 years, basically, ever since I could talk. And a lot of people are skeptical, but my dad still tells me that story to this day. He's like, Jason was done. He was gone. And I'm like, Dad, there were other movies that had multiple sequels.
Hey, to be fair, Tom Savini thought the same thing, and he's not a fool.
And he was
just
like,
wait.
I'll
Just wait until that story where he tells you you're actually named after Jason Todd.
Yeah.
Oh God, I'm gonna die and get put in the Lazarus pit, and then come back as like a violent psychopath who's also a hero. Anyway, Jason Todd wasn't invented till the 90s, so I think I'm safe on that. But
Right. My comic knowledge.
It took me a second to be like, who the fuck is Jason Todd? It's like,
he's
oh
the
yeah,
one that's like, Batman rips ass or whatever on Titans.
Batman rips ass.
Batman
That was Robin's famous catchphrase from the 80s.
So got Batman in trouble.
Yeah. Yikes. So, and to answer your question, Ben, we haven't had you on during the October months, and you're the resident horror expert. You know, that's why we had you on 3 times during John Carpenter month last year or this year. So, you're also invited back for January because it's going to be more Carpenter. But we wanted to have you on pretty much every iteration of this special month, but I think last time you were busy. Yada yada yada. I mentioned the bisque. So with that out of the way, now that we've talked about our history with the film, unless anybody has any actual history about this film, I think it's pretty straightforward. We can go into the body. You guys want to go into the body of the episode?
Let's go into the body.
Ho, 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 ho! Everybody back up, because here comes the body of the episode.
Wow.
That was the long version of it.
Whoever made these is a psychopath.
So this is where it's no holds barred. We don't really have a format for this. We've got a couple, little sort of segments, but I don't think any of them are going to play because the Home Alone of it all is basically Jason starts killing, and I don't have any real theories about this one. I have questions about the ending. I have questions, but I didn't really formulate any non-canon, headcanon theories about the movie. So with that said, typically we just start talking about the movie, but I think in this might be one where we sort of run down the plot because it's not plot heavy, but it is point heavy. But before we get to that, Steve, do you want to give us a brief synopsis of the movie?
Yeah, sure. The story takes place like all the Jason movies up to this point. They give you a little brief history of what happened in the movie previous. I like the beginning of this because they essentially give you like a clip show, like a shortened clip show of all of the best bits of the first 3 movies, just to catch up any lollygaggers who might not have seen them, or just to refresh the memories of those who are returning for the 4th time. And like the previous movies, it kind of picks up right where the last movie left off to some degree. The second movie, we have the final survivor leave the camp, and then she gets murdered in her house like a month later or whatever. The third movie, something similar. I think it's like him escaping or something. I can't remember how the third one starts, but and then this one, it's the police cleaning up all the corpses of the people that Jason killed, and then Jason's body, his body as well, gets taken away to a hospital where he is not dead. He kills some perverts, some nasty people who are willing to have sex right next to a corpse.
It does the Halloween 1 and 2 thing where it's a continuation of the previous movie.
Yeah. And so we establish Jason's alive, and then we are introduced to a family that lives in the woods, I assume adjacent to Crystal Lake. And it's set up that there's a group of teenagers coming to stay in the house across the street from theirs. They've rented it for a couple of weeks or however long. And then we're introduced to the group of teenagers, 6 of them in total. There are, typical horny teens. One of them is so horny that he can't process anything without a fictional computer that he has to type information into. And we have a couple of back and forths. We meet Tommy Jarvis, who goes on to be one of the only characters in this franchise that continues on throughout the films. In the video game, when you when you find the radio, you can call in Tommy Jarvis, and if you die, your character will come back as Tommy Jarvis, which is pretty fun. And Tommy Jarvis is a little maniac who essentially is a miniature Tom Savini. He makes monster masks and special effects as a hobby. I don't know where he gets all this stuff from. He lives in the goddamn woods, but that's a story for another day. And then Jason shows up and starts murdering people, sort of, on the sides. I wouldn't say it's the Home Alone of it all just yet. And then we're introduced to some random character who I guess is related to one of the people that died in the previous movies. I probably should have looked into that a little bit more detail. I assume it's like someone from the third movie.
I've got you covered on that one.
Okay, good. And he has sort of like a ooh la la with the sister of the family, that Tommy Jarvis's sister, Tiffany, I think her name is. And the killing begins and everybody starts dying off one by one. Tommy and his sister are able to survive by Tommy shaving his head to look like Jason Voorhees when he was a child to confuse him into thinking he's looking in a mirror or something. I don't know. And then they kill Jason, and Tommy Jarvis goes nuts and hacks him to death with his own machete. And then the movie ends with the two of them hugging in the hospital. He's still got his crazy shaved head, and he looks right in the camera, inferring perhaps that maybe he will be the new Jason Voorhees, and that never happened. So yeah, that's the summary.
So I haven't seen the next two, but this one feels like the first three are like the origin story of Jason, and then when we get to this one, he's fully realized undead zombie Jason
the next movie he basically comes back from the dead, like he's been dead and buried, and
like his fucking tomb gets electrocuted or something.
No, gentlemen.
That's in 6.
That's 6.
Yeah.
6.
Well, in this one, he's dead and buried in like a grave, and they dig up his grave. I watched the beginning of the 5th one last night. Tommy Jarvis is there in the rain watching as these two like guys just dig his body up, and then he just kills them. He doesn't get electrocuted until the 6th one when his body is dug up again, I think by Tommy Jarvis, and he stabs it with like a piece of a fence or something, and it gets struck by lightning.
Bit of a spoiler about that is that I believe that is the first of the Friday movies with a false start.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, don't spoil, because I don't know. I know certain beats from growing up. I should have mentioned that during my history that all of my friend Jacob, they'd have sleepovers for birthday parties and watch these movies, and I'd just go hide in the other room because I couldn't. Like, I talk about mind prisons, and I was in a mind prison of these kinds of movies growing up, and my friends would talk about it. Like 10-year-olds would be like, "Yeah, we saw the new Friday the 13th," and I'm like, how the fuck? And like, I'm watching the Hellraiser movies now, and I watched Hellraiser 1, and I watched most of Hellraiser 2. I haven't finished it yet, but those would have been fucked up in the early 90s. Like, those are pretty crazy even now. But these, like, they
it's for a different crowd.
It's for a different crowd. It's for adults, people who were in their 30s back in. These are for like teenagers. But even still, like, a lot of the kills are like alluded to. They don't show them directly, or they'll show something for like a second. But this movie does something really unique compared to the other three, where well, I guess the first one's a little bit different, but the other two, like, you see Jason pretty much clear as day through most of the movie. But in this one, they start doing the like movie monster thing where you see flashes of him, but for that third act, you're seeing him fully walk towards the camera and stand there and like struggle with people. And I think that was a really unique way to sort of say, like, he's here. Jason is fully realized. But what's crazy is that moviegoers in 1984 went to see this movie, and much like my fucking dad, left the theater going, he got hacked.
It's over.
He got
Jason's dead.
Hacked to bits. How do they bring him back? But you know, cocaine was a hell of a drug in the 80s, and they cocained their way out of it.
Well, that's the thing, though. They didn't even plan on bringing him back after 3, but they felt that they needed to have an actual definitive end to the character, so nobody would be waiting for the next one to come out.
Let's also not forget about the fact that these movies make like 10 times their budget every time, like clockwork.
More than.
Yeah, it's like crazy how much money they make.
And
But I think Paramount was like, all right, this is the last one because Paramount, a fairly prestigious movie company, was like, we don't like that we have this
Stop making
fucking
this schlock.
this disgusting sore thumb of a movie sticking out, making all this money for us. We got to get rid of it. So let's do one last hurrah.
yeah,
And it once again made lots and lots of money. So they're like, all right,
well, yeah.
let's
The
keep
company
going.
were obviously embarrassed by the property.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make sense. Like you were saying, it was making so much money, but it was just like an ego thing. Jason, you brought up that this is where they really established that Jason is here. This is the movie where the kills got more screen time.
Yeah.
They got bloodier. They got more violent.
Yeah.
They were giving the audience what they wanted with the intent on not giving them anything else after that, which sounds like the weirdest business idea ever.
But what it did is it caused them to have to make the kills more elaborate to the point that you fast forward a decade and you get to Freddy versus Jason and Jason X, and it's all it becomes like a parody of itself by that point because they've done every kill. So they're like in Jason X, like he relives the hits, you know, and in Freddy versus Jason, there's a lot of that happening too. So these are like the most wholesome original kills if you think about it.
the originators.
Yeah.
Steve, I'm sure you're going to bring this up later on.
Mhm.
The errors in this film or the unaccountable decisions that were made. As a child, when I started watching these movies, I noticed right away with the poster of this film.
Right.
The cut's on the wrong side, right?
Wrong side.
Yeah.
But in the movie, it's fine. At the time, you don't think about mirroring things like that.
Oh, right.
I assume, whether or not it's safe to assume, like, did you go into the timeline of the story at all?
Like in terms of like what's happening when and how, like there are moments that's like, this doesn't make sense in terms of like what's there's a moment last night I was like, ugh, where she picks up the phone, dials the phone, and then it shows Jason rip the phone box off of the wall, and then it goes back to her and she's like, oh, it's not working. I'm like, oh God.
Well, there's things like that. There's a lot of things like that. But the fact that
amount,
you were talking about the character of Rob, who shows up, who's basically a Jason killer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where
Which
he
I
wants to
like.
be, yeah.
I really like that.
It's very cool. I like this character
He's
a
there
lot.
hunting a bear because he doesn't want to be like, oh, there's a sadistic murderer out here who may be undead.
Yeah. If you look at the timeline of the movies, he's out there to get revenge for Jason killing his sister.
Mm-hmm.
The timeline of these movies means that Sandra, his sister, died 3 days ago.
Right, so he's already on his motorcycle, or he's hiking through the woods, I guess.
Where's he getting all of these newspaper clippings? Who's doing all of this?
And they're like
reporting?
super aged as well. Like they look like they're years old, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess some of them are from years previous, right? Like, but exactly the timeline of the Friday the 13th story is
even
like
still
it
happened 2 years ago. Like
it wasn't 2 years ago because part 2 happened 3 days previously.
Yeah. The movies all take place within like a couple of months of each other.
Except for when you get to 5, because here
was 20 years later, yeah.
The end of part 4 ends in 1985. I know I'm going crazy here. Part 5, which comes out in 1985, the year that this movie ends in, is set 5 years in the future, so it takes place in 1990. But then 6, there's a character who's already aged, so it's like 1994, but came out in 86, and then they go back into like the whole thing is messed up. And I noticed all of this just from looking at the poster of this movie.
Right. You're like, hold on a minute. Put on your Sherlock Holmes hat and you're like, really?
And that's
none of this makes sense.
Well, it doesn't. It really doesn't. And once you accept that, this franchise is a fucking blast.
Yeah,
it's so much fun.
I feel like nitpicking with any of these franchises, from Chucky to Jason to Michael to Freddy, it's kind of a fool's journey, you know, where it's like you can't, because you're just gonna find things that you continuously pull apart and don't make sense. I do think that Chucky, I've said it before, is the strongest, and I think it's because Don Mancini has been working on them.
It's like his Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, but that's not to say that there aren't
It's his
crazy.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, let's not say that there aren't any weird issues, because like there are. The fourth movie,
like,
he's like, we need the amulet of Dembella. It's like, why didn't you need that for the last two movies? He's like, don't think about it, all right?
And also, it fast forwards to 1998, and then the fourth movie happens months later, and everything is like completely different. It looks late 90s. Goes from 1993 to 98, like visually.
Well, I mean, that's literally passage of time. You can't complain about that. Because the third movie takes place in 1998, and then the fourth movie also takes place in 1998 when it was released.
But what I'm saying is visually, the difference between the two movies is very
but I mean, in terms of like story continuity,
right,
that doesn't do anything.
Nobody has cell phones. That's
just technology catching up to the actual story. It would be weird if they shot it to look like a movie that came out in the 80s. In the 90s.
That would have been great.
It would have been great, but everything was sexier and sleeker and shinier in the 90s. Anyway, we're not talking about Chucky. We're talking about Jason Voorhees. The movie opens with the campground, which the cabin is still technically on the campground in the third movie, right? It's still like nearby, but it's owned by one of the teenagers. They're all dead inside the cabin. And Jason is where we last saw him in the third movie, which is at the base of the barn. And we get a little moment of exposition via police officers and ambulance paramedics. And Jason is strapped to a gurney and put into an ambulance, and everyone just leaves at the exact same time, which I kind of chuckled at, where it's like all the ambulances get closed up, and then everybody and the helicopter, they're all like, all right, job's done, everybody leave at the exact moment. No one stays there to make sure nobody fucks with the crime scene. That's just everybody's gone. We go to darkness, and then we're in the hospital. And do they wheel bodies through a hospital? I don't know if that's how it works.
They come in through,
if they're already dead. If they're already dead, there's probably like an entrance to the morgue, right?
Yeah.
Like
not in the movies.
No.
Not in the movies.
And the thing that I got really excited for, because I like Halloween 2, how it's a hospital serial killer movie, and I was like, oh shit, does this one have a whole part in the hospital? And it kind of does, but it's quick. It's two kind of basic kills.
Nah, Jason's got to kill people
woman.
in the woods. Come on, Jason.
Is...
You know Jason. Jason, come on.
I like hospital stuff.
There is one thing I would like to bring up, and I know it's a movie of its time, but there's two police officers at the barn who are taking the utmost caution to place that axe head in a bag for evidence.
Yeah, the bag is so tiny.
The bag is so filthy, and neither of them are wearing gloves.
No. They're not wearing gloves. I said this to Daniel when we watch it, and I was like, hey, should we be wearing gloves for this? And the guy said, for what reason? It's the 80s.
Exactly.
And then the bag they put it in is like, it just covers the axe head.
Yeah.
And not like the entirety of it.
It's like just a regular Ziploc bag, too.
Yeah, it says Ziploc on it. Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely laughed at that as well, because, you know, you're so used to crime dramas and stuff now where they try to be as accurate to reality as possible, but in movies like this, they probably just didn't have a bag big enough. They're like, oh, if this axe isn't going to fit in this evidence bag.
I'm actually at the point of believing that's actually how it was.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because, you know, the movies up to this point, all three of them have a very particular sort of like visual range in terms of their budget. You can tell how much money was spent on these movies based on camera work, crane work, all of that stuff. And this opening sequence alone, you're like, oh, they must have spent more money because we got a helicopter, we've got a dolly shot, a crane shot. We've got all these kind of wonderfully lit shots for just this opening sequence. And you can tell that more time was put into that than the majority of the other three films, where everything was being poured into like, how do we make this look interesting? And how do we make the most like devastating kills?
The first three really feel like they made it as they went, and this one felt more like almost like a Hollywood kind of a movie. Like it's got a lot of real like you're watching a film that had intention, versus the other ones were like, okay, so what are we gonna do next? And then
3D.
Yeah,
I think that makes sense because we've already talked about how this was supposed to be the end of it.
yeah.
So it's like, how are we going to end this and make sure no one thinks we're going to do more?
Definitely don't put a cliffhanger ending where Tommy Jarvis stares at the screen.
Yeah, don't introduce a kid as the final girl who could grow up and fight Jason for forever.
Yeah. Be great if he learned like every martial art and became a master of all of them, and he had to go back and fight him with jujitsu.
Or it's sidekicks only with Jason Voorhees and not Chuck Norris.
Right.
They learn alongside each other.
The joke that I was trying to make is that Freddy versus Jason does kung fu fight Jason. He's basically doing like roundhouse kicks and stuff.
It's true.
It's wild. I guess if you live in people's dreams, you could learn every martial art. You just have to go into someone's dream and steal their. It's like Neo.
It's basically what Neo does in the Matrix. That's a dream, right? The Matrix.
Robot dreams.
Robot dreams.
Robot dreams.
Also, I like to point out, especially during the Grimoire months, the intros to horror movies usually suck, and this one sucks. It's literally just white on black writing that just kind of comes up to his mask.
What are you talking about? They actually suck.
So
many horror movies have good intros, but you know what doesn't? The Friday the 13th franchise. We've talked about
goddamn
this many
movies and the Halloween movies also. We don't have to dwell on it. I just wanted to point that out since we're at the beginning of this movie. We can move directly on to...
No.
Jason,
if we're talking about this, it's the only explosion in the movie.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
This is where it becomes movie and not film, according to you.
No, there was no high-speed chase, so...
I believe that there was an explosion in the third one and the second one, right? Like the title comes up of just Friday the 13th and it blows up. And there's kind of an explosion later in this movie, isn't there? Or am I thinking about part 6? I'm thinking about part 6.
Don't they carpet bomb them in one of them?
There's no high-speed chase, though. That's for dang sure. He should have chased one of those twins on their bike. There should have been a scene where he's like T-1000 chasing, or like, phasing like he does in the later franchises where he can just like teleport. Which,
I hope we never see that in a movie ever.
Oh, you never want to see it, but the implication is there that he like turns into mist or some shit and can like float across.
My
the map.
favorite
In the video game, that's how you do it. You like turn into mist and you like
that
disappear.
game would be very difficult if you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
My favorite
slumbering
nonsensical
around.
In this one, though, is he's just on the ledge of the house and just like pulls them through a window that explodes. That was kind of an explosion of glass and wood.
Yeah.
Just whips them off the house. That's so. Jason.
So should we talk about the hospital and this perv guy he's like, I guess he's just like a morgue assistant or like morgue doctor.
Yeah,
I don't
and
know.
also the trope.
Yeah.
The trope that every morgue person is always eating.
It's supposed to be like, it's supposed to be like, what is the last thing you think somebody would do if they're around a dead body? It's like, eating a hard-boiled egg or something.
They've been beating this horse forever, though.
For like almost every movie where there's a weirdo who works in the morgue, they're always eating like a tuna fish sandwich or something.
Sandwich. I just watched an episode of literally The League from just 10 years ago, and they made the same joke, and I was like, they've been doing every time that there's a person in a morgue.
It's because it's gross. That's why they do it. It's like, we want to know how gross this guy is. Okay, yes, he's going to sexually assault this nurse, but also he needs to be eating while he does it.
Yeah, and the thing is with the scene, Jason, you were excited for it. I was just waiting for it to be over.
Really?
Yeah, me too.
I'm watching, like, I know that Jason's gonna kill like Nurse Robbie and Axel, and then leave.
Especially when you have a whole Halloween movie of him just killing people in the hospital. I don't need to see Jason do that as well.
And I just wanted it to be over with. And since they drew that out, I actually really appreciated Axel's death because I'm like, finally we're getting out of here. And I actually started rooting for Jason.
What you're supposed to do in these movies, right?
I think so at this point, yes.
At this point, yeah. I think this is also like the next movie specifically. Every character is annoying. Everybody is annoying, and you want to see them die. They're either annoying or terrible. Like they're just a shitty person. This movie, you can at least hold on to a couple of the characters being like, okay, this guy's kind of like misguided and he's really horny, but I like him. He's not a scumbag.
I mean, speaking of tropes, though, don't make out on Jason Voorhees' body.
I think we all thought that, yes.
Yeah.
Don't kiss near a corpse, I think should be a rule in general.
You kiss near whatever corpse you want. These two are clearly freaks.
Not only is it weird, but it also maybe not sanitary. I don't know what kind of gases are coming out of a corpse.
From a meta standpoint, what we know about Jason is that he's the ultimate incel. He couldn't get any and died while,
He was a child when he died. What are you talking about?
They retcon that later, though, right?
No, they don't.
No,
he always dies as a child.
No.
But anyway, the mom was pissed that the kids were ignoring him because they were all banging each other, and that's part of it. And
yeah, his mom's an incel.
So yeah, his mom's an incel. His mom is the ultimate incel, and she passed on that.
Pamela Voorhees, mother of incels.
She passed on that knowledge to her son, and now that's why he does the ultimate deed of murdering teenagers while they're in the throes of passion. I wish Jason had like a rule that he couldn't kill virgins or something, but I think he's pretty indiscriminate.
Like Batman?
Yeah.
Batman.
Exactly like Batman.
Yeah, Batman. And he's like, my only rule is I can't kill virgins.
Because I almost felt like, one of these, like, the pervert who's watching the porno for, like, a whole act, he's clearly a virgin, and I thought I thought Teddy, right, and he was going to, like, let him go because he's a virgin. It's like, I could smell it on you. But Jason doesn't talk.
Or I couldn't smell it on you, I guess.
Yeah.
Would be like.
Yeah. I wanted him dead more than anybody else in this movie.
Oh, not poor Teddy. He's just an idiot. He doesn't know how to hit on people. That's his problem. Comes on too strong.
Yeah, he's one of the more annoying perverts in horror, as far as horror tropes go.
I gotta say though, very convincingly stoned. Like,
yeah.
I have met people who have acted that exact way while on the wacky tobacco, and
he was for part of it.
He must have been actually high, right? Like,
yeah,
for
he
sure.
He wanted to be high during his death scene too, but then he just got way too blitzed and couldn't
fell asleep. Yeah, it's like, I'm too high, man. I can't stop. I can't focus. But like when he turns around and he's looking at the camera projector, like he looks very stoned.
And when he's like
he
laughing
looks like a stoned
at it
guy
too the whole time, I agree with that.
I'm glad to know, because I was like, this guy must be actually high, because he seems high. Like he doesn't seem like a person acting high.
Okay, so I had forgotten how Axel dies, but it just appeared in my head, and he has one of the most brutal deaths in the movies.
Did it appear in the back of your head?
His head gets halfway cut off and then turned, and it's one of the best Tom Savini effects. And then the nurse gets lifted up and then bisected, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so pretty good deaths to start the movie off. The third death also is hilarious.
Banana?
It's ridiculous.
The random hippie?
The
I thought you were talking about the banana.
Yeah, well, I am.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the hippie was fine, but the banana. That poor banana got crushed to death.
Yeah, okay, so it's a double murder.
Yeah.
But she gets it through the neck. That scene felt kind of cruel, though, because it's like...
It was.
They make fun of her, clearly, because she's large, but also that actor was like 18 but looked 45. So I feel like I feel like casting wise, they were like, let's get somebody disgusting. And I always feel bad, just as an aside, I always feel bad when somebody's cast in a show to be clearly an ugly character.
I don't know. I haven't looked into it. Like, that person could have just been somebody working on the production who volunteered. We don't know. It's like, yeah, I'm not hot. I'll do it.
They bark at her, man.
I know, but like, it would seem weird for them to hire somebody for that role when they're in the middle of the woods, right? They might have just asked some PA or like a continuity person.
You want to get stabbed in the neck?
Yeah.
So if we're at the point now where we've already covered the hitchhiker, and these are where we're meeting the teens.
Yes.
The 22-year-olds.
They look young. 16. I mean, some of them look a little bit, but they look young enough, I think.
That's the youngest I think we've seen. Was this Crispin Glover's first movie?
No, I don't believe so. It was early on, yeah. but I have to ask what you think of these 6 teenagers.
Okay, I'll give you my rundown of them. The 2 nerds, they were fine. They reminded me of Freaks and Geeks characters. Crispin Glover kind of reminded me of like a Michael Cera.
So you're saying Jimmy and Teddy?
Jimmy and Teddy.
Okay.
Paul and Sam,
Yeah.
the like sexually charged couple.
Yes.
I liked them. I thought I was like, they're fucked. They're gonna die so hilariously, and then they do. I don't like the pretty boy and the nerdy girl who's like, I'm gonna lose my virginity.
Doug and Sarah.
Yeah, Doug's face is the most punchable face I think I've ever seen. And if you go and look at like,
that's like the square head guy?
yeah, who's like in the shower and has a pretty good
I
death.
said it must have been really easy to grab that guy's head because it's shaped like a block.
Yeah, and pushed
He
into the
reminded me
wall.
of Steve from Stranger Things for
Okay,
some reason.
Okay, yeah.
I can see that for sure. He looks like such a pretty, like punchable face, and but he's not
Yeah.
smarmy, and he's got the girlfriend who usually the smarmy guy's with, trying to like get with her the whole time. But I found those characters to just be like kind of lame, and you're right. It seemed like she was gonna like be the final girl, but wasn't. The twins were fine. Whatever, they were there for eye candy, I guess, and one of them had one of the best deaths in the movie. When she leaves and we see her get stabbed in the lightning shadow, I thought that was a really cool effect. Like, it might not have looked great back in the day, like on a VHS tape, but on my big TV in like HD, it like really popped, and I thought it was cool.
It looked great.
Yeah, and then was that everyone? And then Rob, and then the family, the Jarvis family.
Yeah, the Jarvis family.
Crispin Glover actually only made 1 movie before this,
Yeah.
but he only started acting in '81. It was mostly TV. But yeah, this is, I guess, his like biggest thing that he'd done.
Until the following year.
His life is about to change in minutes
Forever.
from now.
Yeah. Anyway, my thoughts on these people. I like Crispin Glover's character, though he is very annoying and whiny. But I also saw a lot of myself in him.
Am I dead fuck?
Jeez.
That's how he delivers that.
I thought Jimmy was great. Absolutely great. And the others were just throwaways.
Yeah, Doug, I don't even remember a single line he says other than like, drop the soap, hoo. That's like the only thing I remember that he says in the entire movie. Which I also was kind of like, that's kind of nice. Because like they could have made like a really shitty gay panic joke, but instead they just made like a 2 buddies fucking around and being like, wouldn't it be funny if we had sex in this shower joke? Which is like, kind of an alright joke in my opinion.
Yeah.
Corey Feldman I liked. I thought he was good. He's always good, especially this era. Trish was okay. Not amazing, but pretty good. The Hunter was good. The twins were bullshit. I thought they were, I guess they were meant to be like really binary opposite of two sides of the same coin, but that did not come across until like the very last moment where you're
I agree completely. That was a big problem for me. They seemed to be on the exact same page until they weren't, and there was no reasoning as to why they differed all of a sudden.
Yeah, it was almost I thought maybe they were gonna do a thing where like the one twin was going around and like hitting on all the guys there and like making it so that her sister was left out, or she heard Crispin Glover be like, she's the ugly one or something of the 2, and that would have maybe turned her sour, but we don't really get a moment like that. And then the evil twin is like kind of like turning people against each other, which made me like dislike her. I'm like, these twins are non-likable characters. I do like Teddy, but I also agree with you, Ben. I couldn't wait for him to die. I just thought he had he was the foil to Crispin Glover, and he made Crispin Glover's character better, so I appreciated him for that.
Agreed.
And what was her name? The girl who stares at herself in the mirror all the time. Sarah.
Yeah.
Boring character.
So boring.
We've seen that character type a million times and done before, and I like I said, I thought they were setting her up to have some sort of heroic moment. So when she did die, I was like, oh, I thought she was going to live to the end.
Yeah, I think it was.
And I don't care that she's dead. Thank God. There are other more interesting characters.
I think that was intentional, though.
Or
because
red herring is what I meant. Sorry.
well, this is where we start seeing the wind down of slasher films for a very short time, where the franchises keep going, but the new slasher films just kind of slow down or vanish altogether.
Right.
One of the few times where we don't have a final girl in a slasher film in a franchise that relied on them so heavily, because we've got the Jarvis family, and we've got Trish, and we've got Tommy, and I've seen this movie countless times. I still don't know how the mother died.
Yeah, where did the mom? I was going to ask you guys because she just goes, and then
Yeah.
the rest of the movie they're going, "Where's mom?"
And you don't see her corpse or anything. Yeah, it would have been kind of nice if she didn't die, like she like hid or something, and Jason just didn't hunt her down because he's like, I'm not interested in killing middle-aged women. I'm interested in killing teenagers who are showing their booby flesh.
I thought they might have. I thought they were telegraphing like a thing where she was going to be like a character who was able to stop him from killing because she kind of looks like Pamela Voorhees. I thought that's where it was going.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that would have been that would have made more sense than Tommy Jarvis turning himself into a weird gremlin. But I don't know.
The fucking ending is just the worst.
Yeah.
It's also very off-putting. Like you're just kind of
really
like,
is.
ugh, what the fuck is going on here?
Jason, look at me.
And like, when did he cut his pants into shorts? And why?
He's just up there fucking going nuts on his
It's
clothes
like,
and his hair.
it's like, ah!
He's like
It's
cutting
so
that
weird.
clearly
Like he's wearing jeans the whole time, and then when he shows up with his head shaved, his jeans are cut into jean shorts.
He's dressed like a camper, like camper Jason.
I guess, yeah, he's supposed to be dressed like a camper, sure, yeah. That makes sense, I guess, but they don't show him cut them. It just shows down. I'm like, did he change his pants into short pants?
Yeah, there's a lot of this movie that they just rush through to be like, let's just get it over, let's get it out, let's get
very
the
well
theaters.
could have been an entire sequence where Mrs. Jarvis does come back and tries to do something, and they're like, ugh, nah,
Yeah,
no.
it would have been great because she was fine. She was actually a decent character.
Yeah, and like the family dynamic that they had set up at the beginning was strong, even without having to constantly reinforce it. Like you got that they were a loving family, yeah.
And even the fact that the parents were divorced and Mrs. Jarvis is still like, you probably should go see your father, Trish. Like, not exactly a common thing in 1984. It's
yeah,
like,
the divorce
broken
was still
family.
very taboo back then, yeah.
Exactly.
So much so that I'm a product of my dad knocked my mom up and they had to get married. That was pretty common at that time, right? So religion was very much still a normal thing. So
Well, it wasn't even all religion either. It's like it's like also like so no, I don't mean like all religion as in like every religion on earth. I mean like it wasn't, there was a social stigmatism to it as well.
A sign of responsibility.
Yeah, like outside of religion, there was like a social stigmatism and like wanting, yeah, like you said, like wanting to seem like a responsible human being, which is dumb. But here we are, many, many decades later, and people still think that way.
So was this cabin like an Airbnb situation?
I think it's just a secondary home, and that's a weird issue I have, because you have Rob at one point be like, I didn't know people lived out this far. And I'm like, I didn't know people would live out this far and build their houses right fucking next to each other.
And you have 17 newspaper clippings about how people live out this far.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, also it's like, how you clearly live out this far if you're walking through the fucking woods. Like, she doesn't have a car. Like, how did he get there? Did he take a bus?
He's hiking. You can hike a lot of ground in 3 days, apparently.
Yeah. Well, we didn't see the little town this time. You know, the kids always stop in that little town before they go to Camp Crystal Lake. Yeah. And there's always a soothsayer being like, "Don't go up there. There's a fucking killer." And then
I missed that. I missed that so much in this movie.
They just showed all of them in that little trailer at the beginning.
Exactly. And all you get basically is Rob letting everyone know, and they're like, "Well, we're kind of in the shit now, dude."
Yeah.
Like, thanks for warning us after, like,
it's
people
crazy.
are dying.
It's crazy to me that these kids are up there. On their way up, they see like a tombstone on the side of a road, and they don't have any questions. They don't know what Camp Crystal Lake is. They don't know about the murders, and it gets dark and their car breaks down or they get lost or whatever. And then they're just like, this seems fine, and they just make it. And they don't even have any run-ins, or there's no telegraphing of Jason. Because when they're in the woods making it to the cabin, Jason's killing people at a hospital. So it's weird that they had to write these characters not being like spooked by where they were, because in the first movies they're all spooked. Like there's these legends and they're going to camp, and you know, you'll tell stories around the fire, but this doesn't have any of that, Ben. And I think that is a thing that is missing from this. They're blindsided by Jason. They're like, what the fuck is happening?
Well, and that's the continuity thing too, because I believe the first movie is supposed to take place in 1980, and you see Pamela Voorhees' headstone saying she died in 79.
What?
Exactly.
Continuity. They didn't have it. Didn't exist.
What year was that movie released? Was it 79?
It was released in 80, but set in 80 at the same time.
Okay, but made in 79 probably.
Yeah.
But that's a really weird... That's a weird thing. They didn't... I bring this up on the show sometimes about these old 80s movies where they didn't really think that people were going to sit around and pick them apart. You know?
Well, I don't think that anyone predicted home video.
Let alone...
Yeah.
We're in different places in the country talking to each other about this fucking almost 40-year-old movie.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
You can't like we shit on them for it, but you look at the mentality of filmmaking in 1983, 1984. There's no way anybody would have predicted this is going to happen.
If you think about it, it's Quentin Tarantino and Kevin Smith's fault that we even do this, because they do it in their movies. So humans in real life are like, oh yeah, that is strange. Let's pick apart movies on our own.
Pretty sure they put it in their movies because they did it in real life.
I know, obviously, but that's where, like, pop culture-wise, it comes from, in my opinion.
But I do think that we should all start saying "Holy Jumpin' Jesus Christmas" shit all the time.
Yeah, definitely. New saying.
We should call this show that.
That's what we're gonna change the name of the show.
So, that's what we should call our Christmas month.
Oh my god!
What a weird collection of things to say when being startled. So the part. Tell me if this is like. So there's a scene where Tommy Jarvis is in bed and he notices that across the street the teenagers are getting naked, and he's just freaking out in his bed.
What was that?
I'm like, is that? Like, I never had that happen to me as a kid. I don't know what my reaction would be. Would I be freaking out like that, or would I be scared? I'd probably be scared. I'd be like, oh, nudity. Oh, I'm scared.
Afraid. I wouldn't have turned into a literal monkey man.
Well, I mean, some people, when they get excited, can't control themselves. I gotta say. Like, he'll start jumping around. He'll do weird shit.
That's strange. But do you know what's even weirder? The mom comes in to, like, kiss him on the forehead goodnight, and she totally notices what's happening, and she just does the old...
Yep.
She closes the window. Like, she closes the blinds.
I know, but she kisses him on the forehead and goes, oh, you...
She also touches him way too many times that if I was asleep and someone touched me that many times, I would wake up.
Yeah.
She's
definitely.
Patting his head, kissing him, putting the blanket on him.
Also,
like, she might as well be shaking,
smothering him with the pillow.
Yeah.
That kid is bricked up too, so it's like, don't touch me right now, please.
Ugh. That whole scene is just uncomfortably bad.
And there's no payoff, so get it out of here.
Well, we already saw her tits like 10 times. Or wait, has that not happened yet? No, that doesn't happen.
No, not yet.
It's like the next day they have that.
Yeah.
It's the obligatory, it's camp, so we have to have skinny dip.
This is when it feels like... You can skinny dip at any time of day if you want to.
You could, but
but I'm not doing it. I mean, I'm not going to skinny dip, period, because I'm scared that my wiener will be bitten by a fish. That's why I wouldn't do it. But I get the appeal. I've done it in a pool, and it's well freeing, but not in a murky lake. No, you don't know what's down there.
I feel like this crew has no problem going into a murky lake, because later in the movie, Sam, after they're all like dancing around and having a good time, and then one of the twins just starts macking on Paul, is that his name?
Yeah, it's Tina, I think.
Right in front of her. Yeah. And then she bounces and she just gets naked by herself at night and goes swimming in murky mud water. And
it's the muddiest water you've ever seen. It's so gross.
Like I won't go to a beach like that in the daytime, let alone skinny dip by myself.
If I put my foot into the water and it's difficult for me to pull it out, I am not getting in the water. No way. That
scene.
Yeah, that scene is... You know what? I gotta say, her face and the noise she makes when she dies is great. Like, it's very good, but everything else kind of sucks. And she got hypothermia filming that scene, so not worth it. At the end of the day, it's not that great. And like the device that Tom Savini designed for it just does not come across on camera the way that I think they thought it would.
Like it stabbed up through from underneath.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like the similar thing that the Kevin Bacon in the first movie where they made this elaborate rig. They did the same thing, but in water. It required like 3 people to operate, plus the guy playing Jason, plus the actor who's being stabbed. And she, was wearing nothing basically in this freezing cold water. At least the guy playing Jason got a wetsuit, so he didn't freeze to death. But yeah, I think she got like terribly ill from it. The majority of the movie, you can, especially during the rain sequences, you can just see steam coming off of the actors, and like their breath is weighted, and you're just like, it's cold out there. They're filming in the fall, so the payoff versus what they had to spend doing it, I don't think was worth it, because the gag isn't mind blowing. You're not like, whoa, how did they do that?
That goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of the episode, where like they cut away from these kills so fast that they show it like push through and then it cuts away. So you're right. Like it's not like they emphasized it. It's not like they did a close up. It's not like they showed it for more than, show it for like 10 seconds, make it worth it. We just see the thing come through and then it cuts away. And
the thing about a lot of the gags in these movies is that the longer you show it, the more people are going to start to see the seams and like understand how it works. And you have to cut immediately after like the initial like gasp, or else people are going to start to be like, oh, I see how they did that.
Yeah,
they don't want you to know how they
did
it.
The face was really bad in that way.
Well, I'm also super curious to know how much time has passed between that stabbing and Paul telling Tina that like he can't go through with this, and like his guilty conscience is caught up with him, because by the time he gets out there and swims out, this raft hasn't started deflating yet.
Yeah. Well, Jason took the time to patch the hole.
Exactly.
The best way that I could understand it is that the layer on the bottom was just thin plastic, like just plastic.
Right, and her body is sealing it or something. Yeah.
Or no, it just doesn't hold any air. The dinghy around the outside has all the air.
But water would still come in.
It would still come in. It went all the way through.
Because she's weighing it down, so it would be pushing. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it would fold up on itself. But I don't know. This, again, you can't think about it, or else the whole movie falls apart. Yeah.
We've already touched on several topics that just shit all over this movie actually being possible.
But the noise that she makes when she's being stabbed and the face that she makes when she's being stabbed is great. She has her tongue like a little bit out and she's going, she's just making like a weasel squeal. And I think out of all of the horrified screams in this movie, it's the best. It reminds me of I don't know if you've ever seen like the footage of Christopher Lee talking to Peter Jackson about when Saruman gets stabbed in the last Lord of the Rings movie. He's like, Peter, do you know what it sounds like when a man is stabbed in the back? And Peter Jackson's like, no. He's like, well, I do. It sounds like this. It's like this woman had inside knowledge, some sort of clandestine knowledge as to what it sounds like when you get stabbed in the belly. She's like imitating a pig. It's great. I liked it. Yeah. And then the boyfriend goes out and then he gets wiener stabbed, which was also pretty...
Sure did.
Okay, so that one actually made me wince because mostly because of like.
Because you have a wiener and you're like, oh, my wiener!
Even if you don't have a wiener, he gets stabbed in like the groin area up, like
on an up angle.
Yeah, it goes really deep.
Yeah.
And they did this cool effect where that one they could show because there's clearly a guy up, like being held up on a crane with this like device into his pants, but the blood was coming down the harpoon gun, and it was really like shocking because he fucking gets him and lifts him up because Jason has like Superman strength apparently. He can fold a person in half the wrong way.
Yeah. I think back then they didn't call it Superman strength. They called it something else.
They called it Jason Voorhees strength.
Yeah.
Closer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Warmer.
In my notes, we're at the skinny dipping part. I think this part is after, but I don't think there's much of note from the skinny dip through.
No.
Jason approaches the Jarvis family.
It's just a little bit more character development, which I appreciated. Give you a little bit more of an idea as to who Crispin Glover at least is.
Yeah,
because he's like, we don't have suits. It's like, yeah, okay.
I don't want to be a dead fuck.
He's just like, it's just everything goes over his head. You know, he's not with it. He's not hip. He's a square.
He's super flaky too.
Yeah,
like
he's like a bimbo or whatever, like a ditzy kind of guy. Which I liked. I liked it.
When we were introduced to Rob around this time, he's got a boot knife, so he's automatically the coolest person you've ever seen. He says he's hunting a bear, which I already mentioned. I knew what he was doing. So, yeah. Ben, just remind me, he's the
He was like the shifty eyes. He's like, I'm hunting bears.
A bear.
Like, okay.
Tommy's like, you're not hunting bears.
Yeah, hold on.
Drops it immediately.
Yeah.
Rob is Sandra's brother. Sandra was the final girl from part 2.
And she ends up in a mental institution?
I forget.
But he's like sort of avenging her mental duress, but also all the whole group of kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I actually I don't think it's a good character, but he plays it so well that I'm on board.
He reminds me of video game characters like now.
Yeah.
Kind of has that.
Yeah.
He's Leon from Resident Evil vibes.
It's like the movie forgot who the main character is, and then they're like, oh, hey, he's over here. He's over here wandering the woods by himself. You don't see him at all. When he discovers his broken gun, he's just out there wandering.
See, Steve,
looking for Jason tracks.
I'm curious to know if you agree with me on this one. I feel like they did the same thing in the Friday the 13th game with Tommy as what Rob was in this movie, where he just kind of shows up and he's like, I'm here to take down Jason.
Yeah, it's like exactly. You see his like feet come in through the muck. And it's like, Jason's here. I have to get Jason. And he shows up with a rifle, and he has like med packs and stuff. I don't think that Rob is a character, but I think the reason they did that with Tommy Jarvis is because Tommy Jarvis became synonymous with the series as like the guy who fought Jason the most times and survived kind of thing. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Honestly, like throughout the franchise, big fan of Tommy Jarvis.
Yeah. How many times does he actually end up coming back?
He's in 5 or
4.
5 is all about Tommy.
4 or 5. 6
is all about Tommy as well.
Not 7, not 8. So I guess the 3 really. And then in the game, Adam Green wrote the Tommy Jarvis tapes.
Right.
Yeah. So 3 movies in the game, I think.
So that's interesting. That kind of goes with the point I was trying to sort of make earlier about how the first 3 are like the origin, and this is like the Tommy Jarvis saga. Is these 3 movies, and then after that, it's like becomes kind of a self-referential parody. It is Takes Manhattan Part 7?
8.
It's Part 8?
No, wait. 7. No, 7's the New Blood. 8 Takes Manhattan.
8 is Goes to Hell?
9 is Goes to Hell.
Is Hell, yeah.
And what's 8?
Takes Manhattan.
That's, again, 7. So that's like, it gets crazy up there.
Yeah.
And then,
with the Halloween franchise, you get 1, 2, Season of the Witch, and then you get the Thorn trilogy. Okay. It's kind of like Halloween, or with Friday, you get 1, No Jason, 2, 2 and 3, Jason, then 4, 5, 6, the Tommy Jarvis trilogy.
Mm-hmm. Which I think I'm going to end after seeing, after ending up watching all 10 in Freddy vs. Jason over the next couple of years, I'm going to end up holding these 3 dear, even though this movie isn't the most well made. I think it's going to get, I'm going to be over it by the time Jason is just one kill after another, each more ridiculous than the last. And
you don't want to see Jason in space?
I do. I've read that movie because when that movie came out, I was like really curious about it, but I couldn't. There's no way I could have handled watching that movie
It's the first one I saw in theaters.
What year was that? Like 2000?
I think 2001 or 2.
One maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
You have to watch it, man. It's got Nova Scotia's own Chuck Campbell.
Fuck, Chuck Campbell.
I think there's quite a few Canadian actors in that movie. I think it was filmed in
Most
Canada.
of it. Yeah, it's Toronto for sure. Vancouver.
But that one's interesting because I read the synopsis. Like I went on the internet, pretty new at the time, and I was like, wow, I can just read about what happens in a movie. Sick. And I thought there were some really cool, interesting kills in it. But I couldn't handle watching it at the time. I'm sure it looks ridiculous now. It probably is just the campiest shit.
The irony being now you won't even watch a trailer. You're like, oh my eyes.
Yeah.
I can't watch a trailer.
I can't watch trailers because they spoil everything. For instance, the Iron Claw movie about the Von Erich family is out, and I can't watch it even though I know that whole story. I don't want to see the way that they look as their characters. That's on me. That's a me problem. So... moving along, I'd like to... somebody in the chat just said, I love this show. So, Polar Nights, thank you. We love you. Please watch more of it.
All of it.
All of it. The Tom Savini self-insert bit with when Tommy takes Rob up to his room, we steal the masks.
Yeah.
There's a weird, awkward scene where Rob is being yanked by Tommy up the stairs. And she's like, hello, who is this man?
Who is
Tommy,
your new
how
friend?
many times have I told you to stop bringing strange men to your bedroom?
He's so tall.
Yeah.
Oh, Psykraut in the chat with, they clearly don't know what they're talking about.
Uh-oh.
That's a friend of the show.
Try and school us on that one.
Yeah, friend of the show and friend of Ben from the BS Bargain Bin podcast. He just commented so I'd plug his show, the BS Bargain Bin.
So let's talk about Crispin Glover's dance sequence.
Okay, Ben, I want to know how you feel about Crispin Glover's dance sequence.
Oh, I know the story behind it, so it makes perfect sense to me.
But you hate fun, so without knowing that
I love fun.
Yeah.
Without knowing the story, Steve told me about what actually happened. But how do you think that it plays as is?
It makes sense if you understand Crispin Glover. That even if the actual song that was being played wasn't being played, you'd be like, I could see him do that.
Do we know what the actual song that was being played was?
Yeah. It was Back in Black, AC/DC.
Right, yeah.
Hence the stuttering.
Where he's like, bam,
okay. So, for those listening or watching, Crispin Glover has a dance. So the kids are all dancing to some music, and Crispin gets up and does
the craziest looking dance.
Exactly.
But it's because it's paired to the incorrect music.
Right.
And
because they put on some jazz or whatever.
It's like they paid somebody 5 cents to put like a weird random generic sounding rock song on
80s pop rock.
Yeah, and then it gets switched to like a slow dance later.
Right, yeah, which is old big band.
Or someone turns off the song he puts on and he's like, "Hey, why'd you turn that off? I was ripping it up over here." And everyone's like, "We turned it off to make you stop doing that. We were scared you were gonna hit somebody." He
looks like a weird, like Looney Tunes cartoon almost, like a disjointed. I think I was thinking about Animaniacs. I think there's like a sequence in Animaniacs that kind of looked like his dancing back in the 90s.
It had a real Jim Carrey vibe to it. The head flailing in the hair and everything. You're like, this is like reminiscent of Jim Carrey's stand-up from the same era.
It just falls over.
Or just awkward people in the 80s.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Crispin Glover is the only actor in this movie that makes like he's clearly a cut above the other actors.
Oh, definitely.
He makes choices with his acting where the other ones are just like reading the lines. Two very.
Oh yeah,
like,
that's
varying
why he went
degrees.
on to be an actor. The rest of them didn't.
The rest of them are just. Samantha, though, I was looking at people from this cast, and Samantha looks the same in her like 50s, and she's the only other person of note who like is still around. I think she's like
That's
an
'cause
activist now.
She looked 50 in 1984.
What? She looked great.
I'm joking.
She looked like she was gonna get you. And put your thingy in her thingy is what I mean by that. Penis in vagina.
Oh my God, Jason!
Yep, that's happening.
You know who's gonna come get you, Jason?
Who?
Jason.
Oh shit.
Jason.
Jason's gonna come get you. You filthy boy.
The son of weed.
I was walking around the son of weed. I was walking around the house doing the cha 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 ma ma ma, and Madison was like, "What's that weird laugh you're doing?" And I was like, "Weird laugh? You don't want to hear that. That's no laugh." Because it means Jason's coming. Although in this one, it's typically in these movies when you hear the Jason sounds, it means that something's like a kill is imminent. But it felt like a lot of the times in this one, it was almost a misdirect.
I mean, it's usually just to imply that he's lurking.
Like he's
you know,
around.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you hear it, it's like Jason's somewhere watching what's happening. It's usually accompanied by a POV shot of him like rummaging through the brush or whatever, like
Ripping through a garbage can.
finding a dog,
Oh,
killing a drifter.
Did that dog get thrown out the window or jump out the window?
Right, Gordon? What the fuck are you doing, doggy? Do dogs
know.
just jump through plate glass windows?
I still feel bad for Gordon.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that happen at all.
You know
Whether
how
he
wants to
jumps
watch-
or is thrown.
Even if it was stunt Gordon. Yeah, it's got to be really difficult to get a dog to like leap through a window on camera, right?
If stunt Gordon is like, fuck this Jarvis family, I'm out. I'm like, okay, I'm with Gordon on this one.
Do you think that
The dog leaves, right? Does the dog is gone?
Dog
Yeah,
doesn't
he's
come
going after
back.
that. Yeah.
He swam across
Just like Mrs.
Camp
Jarvis.
Crystal Lake. He went to Camp Blood and he got out of there. He's like, if Jason's over here, the safest place for me to be is the Voorhees cabin
Yeah.
with Pamela Voorhees' head in it.
So you,
Well, the thing is-
posit that that dog escaped and is still alive.
Yeah, I mean,
I hope so.
if they wanted it to be Jason threw the dog through the window, they really needed to have some other kind of establishing shot of Jason picking the dog up.
Right.
Well, I mean, you don't see Jason pick Rob up, but holy shit.
That one, he was already dead. at
That
point.
man flies through that window.
That was good. I think that's probably my favorite part in the whole movie is like
Oh, yeah.
this awkwardly staged shot where she's like locking the windows and then hammering the door and she turns around and you're like, this is a little too wide. And the
But
window
she's
just
like-
explodes.
She's like, one nail, two nails, three
That'll hold
nails.
him.
Turn the lock on the windows that are massive.
Yeah.
Turn those. Keep in mind, the door doesn't have a deadlock because
Mhm.
it's the 80s. In
Jason's
the woods.
already gone through windows and she's witnessed that at this point too. So
He walks through the fucking door.
yeah.
It's great. This is the first time that Jason truly shows just how like Frankenstein-ish he is. You know, he can just walk through a door. The great part about that whole thing, though, is that he throws the guy through the window, implying that he's going to then climb through the window, but then he just smashes through the door.
Frankenstein's his way through the door. But the fact that we're already talking about this shows how quickly the deaths of the other teens happen.
Yeah.
It's
We
so fast.
totally breezed over everybody, which maybe, Jason, we should bring it to that moment, the classic moment. Dun, 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 dun.
Which one?
We're slapping the map on the table. We're battening down the hatches, and we're about to hit the Home Alone of it all.
So fun fact about that one. That one gets DMCA'd every single time I play it. So.
In Russia.
But only in Russia.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're getting an actual strike. Anyway, Ben, if you don't know what the Home Alone of it all is, it is the point in Home Alone where Kevin McAllister slaps the blueprint down on the table and then basically makes a haunted house for burglars.
Perverts.
For perverts.
Pervert burglars.
It's basically, the implication is like, this is when the movie begins. The Home Alone of it all.
So many years ago, I remember as a kid watching and being like, man, that's the part of the movie I want to see. So going forward, I realized that a lot of movies, like, they have a bunch of preamble and then Jason shows up and starts killing people. And these movies all have that. Yeah. Just this movie is the stupidest for so long. For 40 minutes of just like things happening, and all of these movies have this. The one where like anytime they're swimming in these Friday the 13th movies, it's just, things are happening. Like, they're pushing each other into the water. There's no imminent danger. We're seeing breasts, essentially, and guys go, ooh, breasts. Or like they get to the place, or they go to town. The bikers were kind of a departure from that, but a lot of horror movies do this, where it's just some things happen, get to the part where the killer comes. I think Friday the 13th is the worst for it, though, because at least with, like, Michael Myers is pretty imminent danger whenever he's in a movie. He doesn't have a lot of build-up. He's kind of, it starts with him. And Chucky is wisecracking from the beginning. And Freddy, there's a lot more story in the Freddy movies. There's a lot more, like, world building, right? We see a lot more sequences of nightmares. Jason
calls
movies,
people bitches.
He calls people
goes
bitch.
in their dreams.
But Jason, if he's not around, it's just things are happening. People are being warned about.
I know exactly when the Home Alone of it all is in this movie.
I'd love to hear it.
Hey Ted, where the hell's the corkscrew? When the corkscrew goes through his hand, that's when the Home Alone of it all happens. That's the moment.
And way too much blood comes out.
And then the knife in the face.
Yeah, the cleaver.
The cleaver to the face.
Which is a reoccurring Savini gag, which I think always looks good, but people disagree with me. But the way they do it is, like, they start in the placement and they reverse it, basically. So it's always a reversal. And I who knows how many takes it usually takes for them to get the good one, but I think it always looks pretty decent. And even knowing the movie magic behind it, it always looks convincing to me, even though I'm like, I know this is a reverse shot, because there are times in movies where things are reversed and you can, like, really, really tell, where someone's, like, blinking is backwards. It's like, but yeah, that's when it begins. The corkscrew going into the hand just leads to kill after kill after kill after kill, and there's, like, almost a lack of, like, breathing time between each death. There's, like, maybe 2 minutes between each one.
That's the only good one for these teens.
Yeah, I agree. In terms of visuals, yes. I do like the idea of a couple of the deaths more than the execution.
Yeah, because even the one twin who's trying to leave, we do get that great shadow, but then when they actually show it, she just gets pinned to the wall with a machete, which is kind of basic.
Yeah, considering they brought back Tom Savini, who is known as, like, the master of horror, gore, special effects, and the lack of that being in this movie it's a little bit disappointing. I do appreciate the mechanics behind them, because I was telling Ben before we started, like, I watched this documentary a couple of years ago where they go into, like, great detail to explain how all of these gags work, and, like, they show the blueprints of Tom Savini's drawings of, like, how she was standing in the dinghy with her body underwater and the fake body behind her, and, like, the things going through it. And, like, all the stuff is very impressive when you see it in down to its, like, nitty-gritty mechanisms, but then you see it on screen and it just doesn't really work as well as I think that they hoped it would.
Yeah, Jason, if you get a chance, it's called Crystal Lake Memories.
Is it on Shudder?
It was, yeah. It is a long one.
Okay.
Recommend to watch in segments, but it's also a really, really nice book. If you know any horror fans, a really nice collectible thing for Friday the 13th fans.
So you want that? Do you want me to buy that for you?
I already have it.
Okay. That sounded like, if you know any horror fans, they'd love this book.
If you know any horror fans who might want that, it would make a really good gift.
Okay. I get it.
No, they go so in depth with everything that anybody even watching it right now, they don't want to watch all of the movies, but they kind of want to get the gist of how they came to be.
Mhm.
An amazing documentary.
And it's really fun to see the amount of thought that goes into just a gag that takes 2 seconds on camera.
Yeah.
And like the amount of like love and care that go into getting it right.
Mm-hmm. I should say that, like, I usually mention this in my my history, but a lot of times I'll watch a movie in a few parts. But these movies, because some of the stuff in them is so well made and interesting to look at, that most horror movies I just sit through all the way and don't watch in parts. And Friday the 13th is one that I looked forward to and do look forward to covering because of these like super intricate, like the people making the movie at the time, they were doing new stuff for better or for worse.
Yeah.
You know, we look it back and laugh at it because CGI has gotten to the point where you don't know if it's CGI sometimes. And practical effects now are like refreshing again because we've gone through this whole phase and they're touched up by CGI a lot of the time. But when you go back and watch these old movies, there are some kills, like I was saying, like watching the Hellraiser movies, there's some gross shit that is practical, that is made with such care that it's undeniably just good. And this movie has that in it. This has stuff.
That's
great. It's
Lots of
just
stuff.
some stuff that is not
It's
so
shitty.
good.
Yeah, a lot of off-camera deaths, a lot of you blink and you're like, wait, what happened? So like when Sarah finds Blockhead dead in the shower and runs, she's screaming, he's dead, blah, blah, blah. She doesn't find any of the other bodies. She goes right for the front door and forgets how a door knob works, I guess. She's like pulling on it and not once. They keep doing close-ups of her hand and she's not turning it. Like turn, push and turn. And then an axe just comes through the door and embeds itself in her chest and she falls over and she's dead.
Yeah.
They do that a little bit too. I get the point of it, but with the final girl, the Jarvis sister, when she's trying to like escape the house and all the exits are blocked by dead bodies, one of them is just laying on the ground a couple feet outside the door. Like, just step over it. I get you're scared, but you're trying to escape a homicidal maniac.
Well, Crispin Glover is like,
I love that draped body.
That was awesome, but before that, somebody's just it's like slumped over on the
ground.
No,
I know. That's what I'm saying is that she could have gone underneath Crispin Glover's leg.
Yes.
She didn't need to smash the whole window.
Because you'd probably get yourself more fucked up jumping through a broken window than climbing under
glass,
a corpse.
Yeah.
But I did really like, after hating Paul's face, I did like that they emphasized his face getting crushed. And I'm curious, I was so like caught up in the moment that I couldn't tell if it was like a head that was made to be like pushed in, or if it was just a good camera effect. Can you shed some light on that? Did you guys... I was just in it for that moment. Like
it was just a dummy head.
It was a dummy head that they were like that they pushed on. And then I do like that when they show
the actor's skull is actually made of Legos.
No, they actually murdered this man on set.
Because he had a pretty boy face. I'm surprised he never showed up again in movies like Johnny Depp or something. But I like when they show him again and it's implied that his face is like he's face down on like a shard of glass because the glass got broken out. And as he's in the shower and you see like the shadow, he makes that dumb joke about, drop the soap. You see the shadow, clearly not his buddy. It's an 8-foot tall fucking Jason. He just punches through glass. I just love that about Jason, that he's a weird Frankenstein zombie man who just punches and walks through inanimate objects to destroy teenagers.
I know, for having a fucked up eye and not being able to see through solid material, he's pretty accurate.
Yeah. It's like he's paranormal or something.
Or something
like that. No, he's like one of those like blind. He's like a snake. He smells through his other senses.
His mask.
He's got daredevil powers.
Yeah, he sees through his ears and his nose and his tongue.
His eyes are enhanced by his blindness. And during this sequence, like, poor Teddy gets just stabbed in the back of the head.
Good. fucking good.
Just pop the brain, buddy.
I didn't mind that one. I like
Get
the
him
way as he was falling, like Jason just left the knife in, and it like continued to cut the canvas or whatever it was being projected on, and a good amount of blood going down with it. I thought the acting was all right there. I gotta say, man, best death, Dingy. She did the best. She had the best face, best noise. No one's beating that. But he is probably a close second in terms of like the eyes, the shock that he had. Which I like to rate the deaths as I go through these movies because we didn't do it for Bride of Chucky because there weren't really that many kills in it.
That was a different beast. That movie is like a reintroduction to.
I know, but we usually go through and say, what was your favorite kill or whatever, and Bride of Chucky doesn't really have enough kills for there to be a favorite. Most of them are off screen.
Have we covered all the kills at this point? Everybody else survived?
No, we didn't talk about Rob.
How does Rob die again?
He just gets beat up in the dark.
Oh yeah, he gets
screaming,
beat.
"Oh my god, he's
killing me.
He's killing me."
I told Danny as I was watching this, I'm like, if I'm ever being murdered, I'm going to yell, "Oh my god, he's killing me! He's killing me! Run!" And you better listen.
Trish is right there, and he's telling her to run,
and she runs,
screaming,
yeah,
and then turns around and runs back down into the basement and sees that he's dead. Pauses, turns around to run back upstairs, and Jason, again punching through solid material without having a visual, grabs her ankle.
She like fumbles a blade there too, right?
But she's got the machete and just starts hacking at his wrist.
She has his machete.
Yeah.
Actually, it's Rob's. I guess this is where
it's Rob's, because Jason doesn't kill anybody with a machete in this movie.
I think this is where he gets his machete, right? This is where the advent of the machete as his weapon comes into play, right?
Pretty sure that was 3, because two was an axe, 3 was a machete, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Was it?
So right after
which one's the hedge trimmers?
7.
So
no, it happens in a few. Sorry, Jason.
No, I was just gonna say, because speaking of the machete, I want to talk about another great effect in this movie that I really enjoyed. It reminds me of The Walking Dead. It's a very Tom Savini thing to do, but this is where she's running away. All the kids are all maimed around the house. She's got the machete, and Jason like reaches for her, and she just fucking right between his fingers.
Yeah.
And that is such a Tom. Watching 9 seasons or 12 seasons of The Walking Dead or whatever, he did shit like that so much when he was doing the special effects and was the showrunner in that. But the effect for it, like, that's one of the times in this movie where they just do a close up of the fucking gore for once.
I don't think Savini was part of that.
Of The Walking Dead?
Yeah, that was K&B.
He was all over it.
Tom Savini. I think he was a consultant. I don't think he was like actually.
Yeah, because that was K&B Effects. That was like Greg Nicotero that was doing all that.
Oh, you're right. I was thinking of Greg Nicotero. Shit. Well, never mind, but still.
Whoa, you really fern-gullied that one, didn't you?
I really fern-gullied that one. We don't have to talk about that. I was thinking of Greg Nicotero. They're very similar horror men.
They're horror masters.
I think Tom Savini was also some sort of coordinator for
I believe that he was like consulted on stuff, or like they brought him in as sort of like a prestige thing to be like, bring the master in for a seal of approval.
They're all best friends, so no doubt that he had involvement.
The one time we see some really good up close like effect, they had to make a thing for this, was that hand that was
the split hand
cut down about this far,
and it doesn't look great, but it is kind of off-putting and weird.
Gross. Yeah. Anytime they do that in any sort of TV or movie, like if you have a shred of empathy, you know that sucked.
And most people, normal people, are affected heavily by hand stuff, like when hands are being
stuff
injured.
And eye stuff.
Well, it's because everybody knows what it's like to have your fingernail bent a little bit further backwards than you wanted to, or to stub a toe, or you can really imagine it, so you're immediately like, oh, not my hand, please. I would prefer my hand didn't get split in half. They do a couple of hand things in this, right? Like Crispin Glover gets the corkscrew through his hand, but then later when he's pinned up against the wall,
Yeah.
And instead of she goes through the window, Jason just decides to rip him down, like, and toss him to the side.
Spiked up.
We get the shot of, like, I guess they're railroad spikes. That's what they look like.
That's what they are.
Tearing through his hands. Where'd he get those? I don't know. Maybe he walked the railroad on the way back from the hospital.
That's how he got back.
Pulled a couple up.
Crystal Lake.
He just filled his pockets with railroad spikes.
What did you guys
berries
think about the siege on the Jarvis house?
I liked it because it starts with a man being thrown through a window.
Yeah,
it's the best.
Yeah, it is. And
he goes through so aggressively. The shot is so nicely framed, and for a moment you're like, did Jason just like head first dive through the window?
Yeah.
But then I realized,
oh no, he threw the corpse through.
I really like chaos, like chaotic moments in TV and film, and that's the most chaotic thing that happens in this movie, I think.
Oh, you also get
how
a
big
handful
the
of other
is.
Great moments, which is like he gets thrown through. Jason bursts through the door with like very little effort. They then, have a tussle with him. She hacks his hand in half. They run upstairs. They lock themselves in Tommy's room.
Oh yeah, this moment.
He chops the door down like Jack Nicholson from The Shining, and instead of having a Shelley Duvall go through the window and I'll distract him moment, she picks up a TV and fucking puts it on top of his head. And I don't know if you ever had one of those little TVs when you were a kid, but even in the 90s when I had one of those things were heavy, and this is like an 80s version of that. That thing probably weighed like 150 pounds.
My favorite part of that scene of him breaking into the room is the struggle they have moving that giant shelf in front of the door, and they only get it halfway in front, and it looks like the actors are actually struggling, like it's hooked on a mat, and they're like, fuck it, that's as far as we can go. But when he hacks through the door with the axe and he just pushes the top half off, and you realize it wasn't actually a full piece, they weren't connected, you're like, what's the point?
That thing's not going to do anything.
What is the point?
Yeah, I think I had that exact like unit when I was a kid. It was like a shelf and a dresser, and the two were not connected. One just kind of sat on top of the other one. And it also was very heavy, but easy to tip that. I'm surprised it didn't die as a kid. I knocked that thing over several times. But TV to the head, and it's plugged in still, I guess, because a lot of sparks come off of it, and it knocks him out for a minute. It's dazed.
Yeah, there are a lot of sparks that come out of it for a TV that doesn't have an electrical cord anymore. Well, I was impressed.
What are you talking about?
I don't know. I remember hearing when I was a kid, like, if you unplug a TV, don't repair it for a while because it still holds an electric charge for, a certain period of time. And I don't know how real that was, or if that was just an 80s thing.
Why would that
fireworks? So
yeah. Also, it's a weird conversation to have as a child.
My parents were scared of the weirdest things, which also led to a lot of my neurodivergence and like eccentricities, where I'm just like, I'm scared of being electrocuted constantly. If I eat food and then go swimming, I'll drown. Don't turn the light on in a car on the highway at night. It's illegal. The FBI.
Yeah, I've heard that one.
Yeah.
That one is crazy.
Yeah.
That was just a minor inconvenience for your parent because you were probably going buck wild in the back seat.
I just wanted to read a book.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty much that up till this point, and then Tommy Jarvis gets the genius idea to go. Like, how does he even know that that's?
He's been flipping through those newspaper things for a while.
He saw an image of young Jason.
But there is actually no sort of explanation of him seeing that image and making the connection that, like, I can make myself look like he looked. And trick him into. What?
It's not like they took a photo of him coming out of the water at the end of the first movie and then publishing it.
Well, it was an artist's rendition because they got a police sketch or whatever from the person from the first movie. She was like, he was slimy, and he had very little hair,
And his
he
eyes
was
were
deformed
weird.
as fuck.
Oh yeah, it's worth mentioning.
Wait, he was slimy. His eyes were weird, and he had strange hair.
Yes.
Of course, it's called choreography.
Choreography. The official
Choreographer.
autobiography of Corey Feldman.
Oh my god, what a slimy weirdo. I know you love him, but god damn it.
Wrong Corey.
Yeah.
It's literally the same picture up for his IMDb page too.
I'm shocked.
I'm looking at it right now.
It was super off-putting when he just shows up in that looking like that. I was gonna say it's kind of paying homage to like the one girl putting on Pam Voorhees' sweater to sort of confuse Jason in the Baghead one.
I guess.
It's like the same.
I don't know if I would call it homage so much as I would call it doing the exact same thing again, but with a different character.
Yeah.
Cheap self rip-off.
Which was the style at the time.
True story.
But I think that's the end of my notes. He murders...
There's a part where they're driving in the car and Corey Feldman is eating 2 lollipops at the same time, and I was like, that is such a little kid thing to do, and I liked it a lot. I liked the idea of him being like, I'm gonna eat both of these at once. And all I could think was like, are they the same flavor or are they different flavors? Is he like double dipping or is
They're
it the
probably
same?
both root beer.
Root beer flavored lollipop?
Yeah.
That should be.
I love those fuckers out of the machine at the movie store. Not a machine, but like a tree of them, you know, and then all the lollipops stuck in it. Oh man, what a film. Do you guys have any additional notes? Basically the way the movie ends is
flashlight technology has improved drastically since the time of this movie.
I've got a flashlight that when we go camping, you can flash it across the lake and see it on the other side of the lake.
Yeah, I've seen videos now where it's like, these are the most powerful flashlights that exist, and like it'll be a guy who is showing, he'll have like one of those floodlights that just like it like looks like it's daytime. The sky is now blue when he points it in the sky. It doesn't make sense to my brain, but just when Corey Feldman's going through the basement with his little shitty flashlight, I had flashbacks of being a kid being like, why are flashlights so shitty? they don't give you enough light at all. Yeah. And now it's just like you can have a keychain flashlight that will illuminate an entire room. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Flashlight technology rules now.
The one thing I can really commend this movie for is something we had referenced earlier, but it is dropping the final girl trope for a family. Not only a family, but a broken family by 80s standards, divorced family, where it's a single mother and her 2 children and the family dog. And I find it to be a much more sympathetic approach to kind of drag the audience into these characters that Part 4 in a slasher franchise should not be able to do.
No, it should be self-referential and stupid by this point, but this is like a new...
Exactly. And it's really weird to bring up a new element in a movie that you expect to be the last one in your franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And what do they do when this turns out to be a massive success?
Make another one.
Drop the family motif. Go to an individual again. And then after that, you go back to the same old shit again and again and again. So it's just really strange. Like, this one does stand out from the rest of the franchise as what really could have been. Like, it was the next step in how to have survivors of a horror film. And I would like to have seen them build on that, but I think they realized that they could just pump these out faster with the same old formula they used before, hire fewer people, and just make bank.
Mm-hmm.
So it was nice to see, even if it was only once. But I think that's why this one really stood out to me originally.
This is a lot of people's like favorite Friday the 13th movie, as I understand it too.
Yeah,
people hold this one near and dear. It's probably if you're born in 1980, and this is you've got a bunch of you by the time you're of age. you get to this one and you're like, wow, this is up there, especially compared to the ones that would have been coming out when, if you were born in 1980, when you're 14 or 15, they were like, you know, the shitty mid 90s ones.
Jason taking Manhattan like the Muppets did.
Everybody gotta go to space, gotta take Manhattan. You gotta sail the seven
At least
seas.
in space, they went to space.
True.
At least we got to see Space Jason.
Yeah.
Spacing. So the end of this movie is literally just Tommy Jarvis has a snap. He snaps while he's killing Jason. We get just one before we get out of here and do our final thought. I just wanted to point out that I think this is the first time his mask gets knocked off and we see his face for like an extended period of time. Or does the hood the hood get
second movie you see his
off?
face? Yeah,
The bag comes off.
yeah.
Okay.
I
But
think
he's not a zombie at that time.
Yeah, the third movie,
like
the
a
mask
man.
gets knocked upwards and then he pulls it back down. I believe
Yeah.
too
Okay.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I guess my point is moot, and it is a moment where you
Yeah.
get to see Jason's face as this sort of big reveal.
Just like all the other movies so far.
Yeah.
His face has been revealed in every movie.
I forgot. And then we get that, we already mentioned that, you know, Tommy Jarvis has a freak out, he stabs him repeatedly, and then we get that weird moment at the end where it's like the end of the Thriller music video where he looks right at the audience and his eyes may as well go yellow because it...
I honestly, though, to your
Exact
point
same
about you saying like this is the first time you see Jason's face, I wonder why you think that, because you're not the only person that thinks that. Lots of people think that
Okay.
every time they see
Because
Jason's
it's
face in
extended
movies.
and
But no, I'm not talking about just this movie. I'm talking about every single time someone sees Jason's face in a Jason movie, they're like, is this the first time you see his face? And it's like, no, you see his face in almost every single one of these movies. And it's weird because his face is always different every time. It never really looks the same. And I guess it's like the idea of Jason in pop culture is that like his face is hidden, so you must never see his face.
Mm-hmm.
But you always see his face. You see his face all the time. You even see it in Freddy versus Jason, like from the side. They like take his mask off because they have to inject him or something. I can't remember. Or they're trying to keep him alive for some reason to make sure that Freddy can kill him in his dream. I don't remember.
Jabbing him with Hypnosil.
Yeah. Yes. But I don't know. I don't understand why that is a misconception that so many people have. Because it's not like you didn't watch these movies, Jason. We've watched them every, we're on the fourth one now, and
I
you've
remember
seen his
them
face
pretty
several
vividly.
times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've
I think
seen the
it's-
first one twice.
It's because every time you see his face, it's fucking different.
Yeah.
So whatever movie you see the first time, that's Jason to you. So when you see another representation of it, you're like, okay, whatever. But that's not Jason Voorhees. That's
This one
just-
is especially grotesque, and he does get his face gets almost completely chopped in half in this one,
Yeah.
which is pretty graphic.
I am very excited, Jason, to hear your take on the other reveals that we get throughout the franchise, because I think some of them are better and better.
Well, we reopened the book in like May, or is that your birthday month, Steve?
That's me. I think we do it in March.
March. Yeah, we reopened the book in the spring, so I'm gonna watch part. I might actually just go for it over the winter and just bang all these movies out because I really want to watch the rest of the Chucky movies and catch up to the show, and I really want to watch the Friday the 13th saga. But
I was gonna say we should just check it out when I'm there next week.
you're coming here next week?
Yeah, I fly in Thursday morning.
What a reveal. Damn it, we should have flipped the episodes around and done a live one. But before we do our final thoughts, I'm gonna hit you guys with a little bit of this action.
The MPAA, everyone. The MPAA. Wow.
The MPAA number for this movie is 27378. That is an old standby segment from our old co-host, but I like the little thing that Steve made so much that now I wait for the end of the credits and get the MPAA number. Yeah, so what do you say we do a little bit of final thought action, boyos?
My last thing to say is that at the end of the movie, when Tommy Jarvis cuts all his hair off and leaves a couple tufts here and there with his, punk rock eyeliner and his lipstick and his short shorts. They bring him to the hospital. They check him out. And then he's like, "Can I see my brother now?" And they're like, "Yes, but just for a minute." And I'm like, "Why just for a minute?" Like, I feel like it's like, he's far too crazy after a minute. You can only talk to him for 1 minute.
It's just a loser.
They bring him in. And he's still got those tufts of hair. Like, you telling me not a single doctor in this hospital could, like, shave off those little fucking bits of hair?
I thought
He
the
still
same
looks
thing.
insane.
Need them for the evidence photos.
Yeah, that's true.
It's time for our final thoughts.
And the tufts of hair were also super inconsistent
Yes.
from scene to scene because they clearly had to like repaint him up.
And he was wearing a bald cap.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't his real skull. No one's skull is that fucking round.
True. So, as we do at the beginning of the show, we'll do at the end of the show. Ben, give us your, in summation, final thoughts, and if you want to hit us with a little rating, it doesn't have to be anything serious. It can be serious. It can be fun. Just hit us with your final thoughts.
This used to be my favorite Friday the 13th film for a long time. But every year or two, it seems like I'll watch the entire franchise. And the more I watch this, the less I like it. To the point where I think it might be my least favorite of the franchise now.
Whoa, that's crazy.
It's either part 4 or part 8. And
You don't like Jason on a boat for an hour and a half?
I don't like Jason on a boat in a lake that somehow connects to an ocean and takes him to a part of the world that he should never get to.
Listen,
No.
don't you know that Camp Crystal Lake is on Crystal Lake, which connects to the St. Lawrence River, which goes into the Atlantic Ocean?
Camp Crystal Atlantic Ocean.
It's so frustrating. And I'm sure when you look at the timeline, that movie happens in like 2046. But like, I just know, like, the more I watch this movie, the more I dislike it. Like, I love Crispin Glover, I do, and Corey Feldman's in this movie. I used to really enjoy it because it was different, and then I realized what I like about the Friday the 13th movies is the similarities that the others have. I love the summer camp setting. I love the fact that I don't need to know who gets killed. I just want to see a really fun camp counselor kill. The story is completely fucked up for the entire franchise. It doesn't make sense. And this movie as a standalone is fine. It doesn't need to be a Friday the 13th movie, though. It really doesn't. You can swap out this with just a crazy serial killer. The others need Jason to work. This doesn't. It doesn't. It's very generic. It shucks the entire formula of the rest of the franchise. So maybe if they changed the killer, I would actually still like it a lot. But now it's just, it's the first time we get to see a zombie Jason face. Like, it's the first time we get to see really crazy kills in a Friday movie. But
It's almost
the
like
kills that come after are, I think, a lot better. So it's fine. It's just forgettable.
Yeah. I mean, even Jason Manhattan has somebody get their head literally punched off.
Exactly.
No one gets their head punched off in this.
No. I don't want to shit on this movie too much because it's competent. It really is, for the most part. It's a great movie to watch with a bunch of friends. I think you can only watch it by yourself so many times. But like, as a standalone movie, watching this for the first time, as like a part 4, having seen the first 3 movies, if you're going to rate this out of 10, it's probably going to be like a 7 or an 8. For our show on BS Bargaman, it's a would you recommend, would you not? Seeing it the first time, sure. Seeing it 2-3 times, watch the other movies. You don't need to watch them in order. It's entertaining, but it's unnecessary. And I feel like you two are going to have a very different opinion, but I'm very curious.
For sure. Do one of those. That was a class act, Ben. At the beginning, you were like, I'm going to rip this thing apart, and then you really didn't. You were incredibly fair, if I'm being honest.
A lot of people disagree with my stance on this film.
Yeah. I think you've got a lot of culture to your reasoning. You know, you've seen all of the horror movies, so you have an educated you've got like an educated nuance to the reasons. Like there's I've got a bit of that, Steve's got a bit of that where we disagree, and I think it just comes from knowing what you like and knowing what is objectively good and objectively bad. Yeah. So with that, Steve, why don't you hit us with your final thoughts and how she goes.
Okay. I am one of the people that herald this as one of my favorite Jason movies. So the exact opposite. But you have also kind of had the caveat of you've seen it a number of times alone, which I don't know if I've ever watched this movie completely by myself. I think maybe I have once. And that's kind of the joy of the series, is watching these movies with people. And I try to sometimes throw them on when I'm by myself. And it's difficult. It's difficult to sit through a Friday the 13th movie on your own because they are extremely predictable and you know what's going to happen. And they don't really ever try and stray from that formula of these are the people that are going to die and these are the people that aren't going to die. And the task that you have as a viewer is to try and figure out who's going to survive. And you can usually do that pretty early on in all of them. They did throw you kind of a curveball in this movie by giving you two people and a family that you're like, any one of these people could survive. But once the other two are dead, you're like, okay, so now I pretty much know who's going to survive. I like Friday the 13th as a whole. And so for me, putting like, this is my favorite over this one or this one or this one, this one's more fun for this reason, this one's more fun for that reason. I can do it when put to task, but I have like so much love for the franchise as a whole. And the idea of Jason and the idea of a killer at a summer camp that's what's fun to me. Yeah. And, I said it in my intro, I have loved the video game for years now, and to me the best Friday the 13th movie is the Friday the 13th the game, where I'm just running around as a camp counselor trying to escape. And there are so many memories that I have of playing that game that are almost a better movie than any of the movies that have ever been written, based on kind of the interactions you have with the people you're playing with. So to me, this movie is great because of the performances that are in there, and the introduction of Jason as like this weird tank, where you're like, now he's a tank. He can walk through doors and he can throw people however far that guy was thrown from. I assume he wasn't right outside the window when he threw Rob through the window. I pictured him like at the other house, like. Again, the gags that we were talking about earlier, they didn't really hit as heavy as I think that they had thought they were going to, and I would have liked to have seen that. I almost think that if they had taken the idea of Rob and like focused on him as a character, and we just kind of move over to maybe one or two characters in the houses, we have the Jarvis family, we focus on the sister and the brother, and maybe just Crispin Glover and his horrible experience as a teenage boy, and then we break that up by going back to Rob. And like, imagine there's a moment where Rob has a standoff with Jason in the woods, and like he kind of gets the upper hand on Jason for a second, or he gets away from Jason, and we establish him as a hero character. Because the one thing that kind of sucks is that like the only time we see him as a hero character is that he brought a gun, he brought a machete and a tent. You don't ever see him do anything else other than fix the car that establishes him as like worthy of ever being a threat to Jason. No. Anyway, I can talk about the movie forever, which we've already gone on for a while now, but I do like it. But it's difficult for me to rate Friday the 13th movies at all. Like there are lots of things I don't like about the third one, but there are lots of things that I do like about the third one. I like the shitty biker gang, and I like the eyeball being presented to us like, here's an eyeball in 3D. But if I had to, I'd say the second one probably still rules over this one. but this one's a close second for me. And to give it a rating, I'm going to give it a Friday the 13th axe wound mark on my mask on the wrong side. That's my rating.
That's a good one. I get it. Before I talk about my final thoughts here, just very quickly, favorite kill. My favorite kill, I think, overall, is the head halfway cut in half and then like twisted off.
Ooh, the first kill.
Yeah, that one stuck with me. Is all. How about you, Ben?
It's a good kill.
Oh, Rob, for sure.
Rob.
I am being murdered.
Oh,
He's murdering.
He's killing me.
He's killing me.
He's killing me.
That reminds me of a joke from like a Scream movie or something, which they might have even made that joke in one of the Screams. And how about you, Steve?
My favorite death is the death of Gordon's storyline when he jumps through the window and never comes back. No, my favorite. Yeah, he's like, I'm out of here. My story's over now. I would love a spin-off movie called Gordon.
Gordon the
and
13th.
It's just about the dog from this movie. No, my favorite. I don't know, man. I like when the face shit she makes when she's getting stabbed through the dinghy. She makes a hilarious face and a great scream. That's my favorite.
Nice. So I found that part 4 sort of undoes a lot of the wrongs that the first 3 made, because I really like the fact that we got a fully realized Jason. And it feels a bit more like it feels scarier in at some parts than the first 3 do, because they've got a bit more budget for the gore. And Jason was the most menacing he's been thus far, because he is full zombie.
What about when he does this in the 3rd movie? He's got an axe stuck in his head.
That's pretty good. I'm not 100% sure why they did the ending like that. Is the implication that Tommy Jarvis becomes Jason? Or what? Because once again, the ending didn't have a clear outcome, just like the last 3. Because they kind of do the thing that the Nightmare on Elm Street movies do, where like they watch the whole movie and then they just do some shit at the end that's like, who knows? The score I did like in this one. We didn't really touch on the score so much, but I thought that there were stings in this that really like drove the intensity of what was happening, and especially when Jason's like being menacing and arriving. Loved that stuff. And the special effects were, of course, as we talked about, a step above, because it was a bigger budget kind of. They were trying to go all out for the final chapter. They did the classic horror thing with Jason, where you only see him in glimpses until the long shots of him towards the end, which we talked about. And all the kills are very fun. Some actually made me grimace. Especially Jason's own death. The head sliding down the machete. Like, he fucking gets stabbed in the head and then falls to the ground, and then his head slides down the machete. Maybe that was my favorite kill, actually.
If you think he's dead, Jason, you're a fool.
You're a fool.
But it's the final chapter.
It's the final chapter.
Yeah, that was a typo on all the advertising material.
The version that I watched, we didn't talk about this. We didn't talk about which versions we watched, but for whatever reason, I watched it in the Google Play. I bought it in HD because it was the same price as renting it, so I just bought it for $5. I'll probably watch this movie a few times over the years, but it kind of had these moments that looked like the frame rate was like upscaled, so there were moments that kind of looked like a soap opera.
Yeah,
you know. So I thought that was kind of endearing to the sort of the overall like arc of how I felt. And beep beep boppity boo, I had a good time, and I'm excited to see the next several. I give this a 3.4 to 5. I think is a pretty good rating. And I give this movie a series of events that lead to Corey Feldman to pursue a musical career because he's traumatized by the events of Friday the 13th Part 4.
I don't know if he's traumatized by those events. He's traumatized for sure, though.
And as I was writing that out, I was like, ugh, maybe I don't. But we don't need to dwell on that. So, This has been our show.
Can I just list off some other movies that came out in this year? Because there's a lot of good ones.
1984 was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot.
There was, okay, I'll only read out the good ones. Gremlins. Dune, ? Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I love it. A Nightmare on Elm Street. The Karate Kid.
Keep going.
The Never-Ending Story. The Toxic Avenger. What? You haven't seen it, Jason. You lie.
True.
Starman.
We covered
Romancing the
Starman.
Stone.
Romancing the Stone. Yeah.
The Terminator. The Last Starfighter. Ghostbusters. Red Dawn. The Muppets Take Manhattan. Looks like they took it before Jason even thought about taking it over here. And the rest are a bunch of Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind, but that's me. I don't know about you guys.
The next several years, musically, like in pop music and in film, go fucking so hard. The next like 3 or 4 years go.
Any of you guys seen Ice Pirates?
No.
Yeah, it's a long
It's
time
pretty
ago.
good. It's pretty good. It's all right.
All right, well, that's our show for tonight. I feel like we're sucking the soul out of Ben as we continue to talk. It's an hour later in Halifax, but Ben, before we go, would you like to plug anything?
Well, I mean, just the BS Bargain Bin podcast to do with Sandro. We've been doing it for, our season finale for year 3 drops tomorrow. We're covering The Faculty from 98.
Good one. I like it.
Yeah, the next 2 episodes have been announced. We're starting off with Phantoms and Disturbing Behavior. You can find us on all the social media platforms, but a lot of people seem to find us on YouTube at BS Bargain Bin. It's just 2 guys shooting shit about movies. I think we all understand each other here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to say thank you so much for bringing me on to talk about a Friday the 13th film, because we've talked Carpenter a lot, and it sounds like we may be doing it again soon.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which film yet, but I'm very excited.
If you have one that you want to do, just let us know.
About it.
Yeah, sure. I would love to.
We probably won't have you on for 3 episodes because we've changed the format of the show to 2 guys and a guest. But if we don't, we may hit you up for all of the episodes. Who knows? Who knows? It's January. Sure. It's weird. So, yeah.
Well, I'm always down to talk Carpenter. I always have been, always will be.
Mm-hmm.
Until we run out of movies, in which case I'm okay retreading things I've already spoken about.
We could redo all of them.
Oh man, I would redo In the Method Madness.
Yeah.
I would redo a couple.
I'm really glad you guys asked me to be on Friday the 13th final chapter. I think I'd have a lot more fun shit to say on other ones. If you go forward with this, please let me know, because I would love to be on board. 5 gets weird.
Okay.
6 gets crazy. 7 gets crazier. It's just, there's so much to talk about moving forward. So keep me in mind. I'd love to be back.
Yeah,
of course.
I've marked. I've remembered that you're all these. You like these, all the Grimoire movies, but Friday the 13th sticks out in my head as a you movie. I've known you for a decade now, or more.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So thanks Ben once again for being on.
Oh, thanks guys.
We have to ask the same question we ask each and every week. And hey Ben, why don't you ask the question that we have to ask each and every week?
Hey Steve, hey Jason.
No, we don't do that anymore. You just have to say.
I was about to ask you.
I was gonna ask you.
Oh.
Jason. I thought we were rotating here.
No. I thought you were going to say for Steven and for Jason, the old thing we did. Sorry, my bad. Ben,
no.
Go ahead.
Fine. Hey, did you see this one?
God.
Your fucking problem.
Yeah, that was rough. What the fuck is the Avengers? No, the whole end there. Yeah. I was like, it sounds like he's gonna do it perfectly.
No, your hated to see this one was excellently executed.
It was perfect.
Um,
Have you guys? There's a movie in 1984 called Chud, and it's an
Yeah.
acronym. What? I don't know what that
is
is.
subterranean.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
Yeah, that's
Oh
the one.
my god.
Yeah, they
I need-
released a sequel called Chud 2 Bud the Chud. It was actually a failed sequel to Return of the Living Dead 2.
All right. Well, I guess we got to do Bud the Chud.